Now we take a look back at Steven Soderbergh's runaway success, Erin Brockovich, as it has its 25th anniversary. The film stars, of course, Julia Roberts and Albert Finney as it takes on the true story of Erin Brockovich and the case against PG&E Water Corporation and the poisoning of the local water in Hinkley. Now, we are looking back at this film. An absolutely staggering amount of money at the box office. It also was nominated for 5 awards at the Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actress, yada yada yada, and of course won for Julia Roberts. She gives an absolutely fabulous performance in this film. I'd never seen this film before, and I sort of was taken aback by just how enjoyable it was to watch. And of course it's a very severe case. It deals with morality, deals again with poverty, and how someone can rise above the position that they seem to be destined with to better other people's lives. Now, Reuben, you were saying before we rolled the cameras that this is quite a comforting movie to you.
Yeah, I know that sounds absolutely insane, that a film about a true life mass poisoning by a giant industrial corporation could be a comfort film, but this genuinely is. I've watched this a lot of times. It had been a little while, so I revisited it, and I was just really struck by, I've actually seen this so many times that I know a lot of the script by heart. And I think that's because, even though it is a film about a very serious real story in which many, many people's lives were incredibly seriously impacted by very, very irresponsible and criminal behaviour, it also, at its heart, is a love story. This is sort of a buddy comedy between Julia Roberts' character, Erin Brockovich, who is a real woman who I find very inspiring in day-to-day life, and Ed Masry, who runs the legal firm who takes on the case. And for me, I just think that this is a really brilliant way to tell the story. It's written by Susanna Grant, who I think she just had the same massage therapist as Erin Brockovich, and the therapist put them in touch and they had coffee, and then Susanna Grant was like, I want to tell your story for the screen. And so I think that what Susanna Grant did a brilliant job of is looking at this very, very serious, very, very at times bleak and upsetting story, and realising that actually the way to tell it was as a platonic love story between Erin and Ed. And I think the performances really, really sell that. There's such an abundance of kind of hilarious little playful teasing between the characters. But the film is a real testament, I think, to the way in which people can actually make a huge difference to their community. If we actually take a stand, if we're brave enough to take a stand, we can affect real change. And I find that genuinely very inspiring. Erin Brockovich, I think, is such a brilliant character in that way, because despite the fact that she has no legal background, she doesn't have a kind of legal education, and she's got absolutely no money, she's stony broke when we meet her, she knows that the right thing to do is to help these people, and that's what drives her. And that gives her a connection, because she's not a lawyer, she's not speaking to them in legalese, she's not treating them like numbers on a list of people that she has to get through. She's talking to them as human beings. She's forging that human connection. And so I just think it's a brilliant film, honestly. I completely love it. I think it might be one of my favourite films, because I enjoy watching it, and I'm also inspired by it. And that's such a potent combination. And I adore Julia Roberts in that role. I adore Albert Finney. I think the balance between curmudgeonly and kind of twinkly is expertly navigated by him, and they are genuinely such a joy to see on screen. So I just love it, and I find it such an important film because it talks about the way in which communities are essentially gaslit by companies who think that they have so much money they can do whatever they want. And it's so important to stand up to that. We see it in another, I think, unbelievably brilliant film, Todd Haynes' movie Dark Waters, which came out about 5 years ago, I think, starred Mark Ruffalo. That is an unbelievably great film. You should absolutely watch it. It covers a similar topic. And literally last week on Netflix, we have Toxic Town, which talks about, in the UK, the Corby poisonings, where industrial waste was moved in a very irresponsible manner through domestic areas, and had a huge detrimental impact on the population living there. So I think these stories are really important. It's still happening. It's happening around the world where companies are not taking all of the right precautions, and they think that they are above the law essentially because they have so much money. This is a really important film, but it's also a really lovely story about two people platonically falling in love. So that's my gush over. I love this film. I think it might be perfect. I adore Thomas Newman's score, and the first 5 minutes has one of the best car crashes in cinema that is made all the more brilliant by the fact that you see in one shot Julia Roberts get in the car, so you know that it isn't a stunt double.
Unlike you, Reuben, I had not seen it before. I'd heard a lot about it. It's a very well-known film. I think what is really expert from a cinematic point of view, of course, the script is incredibly tight. Soderbergh, we had a joke that he's a great working director. He does everything and anything in every different which way, and that's what he doesn't have a distinctive style. That in his way is a style on its own, because this is very different from Presence, which we talked about previously, and it looks very different from what the film we're going to talk about next week, which is Black Bag, which is also Soderbergh, and so many different facets. And I think that's such an interesting thing, because the filmmaking emulates the characters in itself. When it begins, it's down and dirty and it's sort of very handheld. The sort of stock film that is used is graded to a sort of warm orange to sort of emulate the same sort of desert vibes that is a common occurrence, and just sort of the barren idea that though the film is about water, you have this very warm, almost dehydrated look to it, because it is so, everyone's sort of sweaty and hot, and yet because the water is toxic, you don't have a great presence of sort of blues or any of those colours, which I think is a very subtle but effective choice. I also think Julia Roberts gives a masterful performance. In this film, she's dirt broke and she can't look after herself. She has to put her children first, and yet she pulls it off. She is very down to earth, and it's hard to think that someone as powerful and famous as Julia Roberts, who'd already done Notting Hill and great movies by this point, is giving this really of the dirt performance. And I think it's masterful, and I would keep watching her. I think, she is, like, the film itself, great script, great direction, great music, great premise alone. You know it's real life, but the way it's presented, as you said, Reuben, the way that it actually deals with such a serious event, what I don't think Marching Powder did was try and balance severity with comedy. Like, this does a really decent job at it, because it is such a dark and depressing moment. There's beautiful moments where Julia Roberts is just coming to terms with the fact that a child has contracted cancer because of the neglect of this powerful corporation. And she has to keep a good face because she has to be positive. But you see the cogs whirring. It's a brilliant piece of acting, of just thinking through the situation and really emotionally believing it, and it's a very believable performance. And I think in the script there are a few things that are done to sort of accentuate how desperate and how necessary her position is. She doesn't get to see her kids. The Aaron Eckhart's performance, effortlessly cool and charming as he always is, but also sort of love and family are put to the wayside because she has to put other people's lives first. And she is presented as not selfish in the beginning, but sort of she has to do everything for her own family, and then it even transcends that, because getting a better life for her family also means getting compensation and retribution for the people who have suffered. And I think Albert Finney is effortlessly enjoyable as well. As you say, he gives a very twinkly performance, but also, he's not the brevity, he's not the emotional brevity for it, because he is a cold lawyer, but he's likable enough that we're not cold enough to him. And there's a few comedic moments where there are incredibly cold, praying mantis-like lawyers that can't understand human behaviour, which is a bit on the nose.
No, but that scene has the film's best line, in my opinion. Which, I mean, and Erin gets a lot of absolutely killer dialogue. But my favourite line from this film is she says to the cold and aloof female lawyer who's coming. She says, "That's all you've got, lady. 2 wrong feet and ugly shoes." And it's such a burn. I completely love it. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's this great juxtaposition between her humanity and the legal profession at large. But I think that's what the film does so smartly. It avoids it becoming a courtroom drama because it is fundamentally interested in the human experience.
Yeah, we don't even see the eventual arbitration that happens, and I think that's such a masterful move. We just see the aftermath, and there's only a bit of lawyering, and really, you're right. We just we do what people often don't do in this, and actually feel the human impact, genuinely feel it, like the pain, and like just great performances from all the side characters as well. All the small little bit parts are done expertly well. So what more is to say about Erin Brockovich? It's a great film. I'm glad it got re-released in the cinemas. As I said, it made a lot of money, and it was an awards darling for Julia Roberts. And so yeah, check it out it's on Amazon Prime, so you can watch it there. Yeah, absolutely great. I'm glad I got to watch it for Cinema Spotlight.